What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamesite Chronicles, the console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 22. And thank you guys for tuning in last week. We actually just surpassed, I think, over 150 downloads, too, for the show, which, again, is nothing in the grand scheme of, the podcast world, but I'm stoked about it. I'm proud of that little milestone, and I have you to thank for that. So thank you guys for tuning in each and every week to I'm pretty sure I've got, just a handful of consistent listeners, but I see you and I appreciate you. I hope you guys also had a great week. And if you're into golf, like I am, and as I've mentioned on the show before, then you are certainly watching, and by the time this podcast goes live, have watched the Open, which is pretty cool because it's I think it's at the old course, and I believe it's in Scotland. Really cool course, and it's cool to watch. Though I gotta say, I find it a little difficult to watch some of my favorite players because the time difference. And so by the time I get up, 6:30 a.m., I'm catching kind of the tail end. However, it's working. I'm recording this on Saturday. It's working for the last groups and kind of the leaders because that's when they start to tee off, is around that time. So, okay, it's all right. I'm catching it a little bit. So I'm enjoying that, but I also hope you got some video game times in. I know I've gotten quite a few games in this week, and we'll talk about that, but definitely good to get it in. You guys are having a good summer. It's mid-July. Things are hopefully looking up. I'd say they're looking up on my side. So the other thing I want to mention too is I'm going to reach out to my man, and if you're listening, shout out, look out in your inbox, Legend of Cotton, to get him on the show and talk about Call of Duty. It's something I've been meaning to do for a while, as I want to start to get guests on, but I had some technical things I had to overcome, and I think I've overcome those. But just something I've been wanting to do for a while. So I'm going to try to get him on the show in the next week or two. So if you're listening, hello. And I'll be reaching out very soon, my man. Hopefully it all works out, because it's like I said, it's a long time coming, and it's something that I've definitely wanted to do. And I know I'm a solo host podcast here for the show, but maybe there's a future, if I find the right person, where we can have a co-host on there and have more of a live dialogue rather than a monologue, if you will. But I'm excited about that, so keep an eye out for that episode to drop. He is a Call of Duty fiend, and I want to dive into that here on the show. Now, for those new and uninitiated, remember the best way to support the show is to leave a comment if you're listening on YouTube or the podcast platform you're listening on. And certainly, if you can, leave us a nice review on the podcast services. That helps us get into the algorithms, lets people find the show easier, and all the like. You can join me over on Locals, the Patreon-esque platform alternative at the Gamecite chronicles.locals.com. You can also listen to the podcast there too, if you'd like. I post the podcast each and every week there. And then, like I said, I do put the podcast also up on YouTube, so if you want to check out that, as well as some of my other videos. I've got tons of old videos when I used to consistently do YouTube, but now I'm kind of getting into the YouTube short game with the vertical video format. So check that out, and if you like it, be sure to subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at Gamesite Podcast. And new episodes of the show go live each and every week, Mondays at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, for this week's show, I want to talk about GameStop. I feel like this is kind of a long time coming to dive into GameStop, but they've been in the news here recently. It's in the last 2 weeks, and I felt now's the time. This is a good time. Let's dive into some of that news and then do a little speculation on GameStop, because doesn't seem like things are looking too good over there. Also, a couple other news stories I wanted to dive into around Bayonetta. Some exciting news for Bayonetta. And that upcoming Skate 4 game from EA. So we'll dive into those. But first, before we get into that, let's talk about the games that we're playing. And as always, I encourage you to write into the show to let me know what games you're playing so we can talk about that, bring it up on the show. And it's just so exciting to see what everyone out there's playing. It's just, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but I think it's fascinating to see what people are into and what games they're diving into. Now, for me, like I said, I got quite a couple different games in here, similar to the week prior. And it starts with a Plague Tale: Innocence. So last time I was pretty deep into the game, and I beat it. I finally wrapped the story. And it's funny because when I stopped to record the show last week and talk about, my update on it, I was probably 15 to 30 minutes away from the end when I had stopped. Like I was right there. Pretty much just kind of go a little bit farther and then kind of fight the final bosses. So overall, I liked the game. I thought the story was pretty good, interesting at least. And the way it wrapped up, I gotta say, I'm kind of curious how the sequel that's upcoming is going to kind of continue the story, because this doesn't spoil anything, but there's kind of a scene at the end where you kind of just get the sense that something's happening, but I have no idea what actually happened. And I think it sets something up for a potential sequel. So I don't know. It'll be interesting, and I'm kind of curious to see the direction that they go. As I mentioned before, the game's combat was definitely my most frustrating point, and that's the jank in the game right there. And it basically, if you get like one-hitted, you're dead. It's over. You got to start all over. And it's really noticeable towards the end with the final boss fight, and then some of the areas kind of leading up to that final boss fight. It's just pretty frustrating. And it's not that it's hard, but you kind of just have to do everything pretty perfectly, kind of nail it and kind of nail your execution there. So I really hope they can improve that in the second game. I think that's the one area that they need to improve, because like I said, I think the game looks nice. The character, the voice actings, I thought that was all done, pretty well. And so with the direction of the story, wherever that could go, and if you can improve the combat, which I know that it seems like there's more combat options in the second game from what I've seen, I think it could be good, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. Now, the next game I played, and I've talked about this one extensively before, but I dove back into it, and it's Dying Light 2. And the only reason because I dove back into it is because Techland put out an update that fixed the issue of not being able to fast travel. And that was that's what I encountered, and so I was like, I'm not playing this game anymore. So they finally fixed it, so I said, okay, they fixed it, I'll go back, let's finish this game up. And finish my playthrough. And I did. I finally beat the game, rolled credits on it, and this game is just fine, like overall, in my opinion. Like the story had some cool moments, and it wraps up, and it's I don't know, a little anticlimactic. And I'm kind of curious because there are decisions in the game, and that was something that was heavily marketed in terms of your decisions and the paths that you choose. I'm curious if that had an effect on my story. I genuinely don't know. I meant to look it up to see if there's multiple endings and all that stuff, but I don't know. For me, like ultimately this game is just a disappointment because the first game is so dang good. And going into this game, the changes that they made, I don't think were for the better. And I think you couple that with a lot of the technical issues they've had with this game since launch. It's just a recipe for I don't know. It's just not up to par. So I'm disappointed in it, to be fair. Like there's fun moments and there are fun missions, but just as a whole package, it just didn't do it for me. So, and think about it. If they do a third game, I really hope that they get back to the roots of what made the first Dying Light so good. And I think one of there's two things that I think make that game so great. First is you got to get away from this RPG heavy, style of game. You can have some of those mechanics. That's fine. The first Dying Light does, but get back to horror. Bring back the horror in the nighttime. The nighttime mechanics in the first game were far superior than the second game. The second game, I found it kind of annoying, to be honest. And if we can go back to the way it was in the first game and kind of bring back that fear factor, they're like, oh shit, it's getting dark. It's about to go down out here. I need to get moving. You know what I mean? So bring that back. If they make a third one, please bring that back. Other than that, I've continued Monster Hunter Rise as well. Kind of just doing a hunt or two here and there, continuing my playthrough kind of through the main story. So nothing really much more to say there, but it's something I'm kind of playing on the side outside of like, a main game, so to speak. And then, so after Dying Light 2, I was kind of thinking, okay, well, like what do I want to pick? Like, what do I want to play? What do I want to dive into? And I decided to pick up Ghostwire Tokyo. So I picked it up. It was half off recently here at Best Buy. And I know Amazon Prime Day had a bunch of sales and stuff like that just happened this past week, but I picked it up, and in part, because it was, fairly inexpensive, but also I'd heard some good things when catching up on, the main podcast I listen to, Sacred Symbols. And they talked about this game and kind of shed some context on what to expect. And as I've mentioned on the show, I didn't think this game looks that great at all. Now, I like the devs' previous games. Their name escapes me. Tango Gameworks, that's what it is. I love their Tango Gameworks' prior games with the Evil Within 1 and 2. I loved both those games. I thought they were fantastic, especially number 2. I thought even though number 2, I think maybe I'm in the minority on that, but I thought it was far superior to number 1, and I was just hooked on that game. I couldn't put it down. And so I was disappointed in kind of the direction they were going with this game. And from what I had seen, it was like, I don't know, it just didn't seem like a game I would be into. But hearing about it, that it's fairly short, it's well-paced, and it's a collect-a-thon, which I didn't realize. I kind of thought to myself, maybe that's something I might like and kind of get into. So I jumped in. And I gotta say, I'm genuinely surprised by it. I'm genuinely surprised by this game, and I'm really enjoying it. I've played about 2.5 hours, give or take. I think I'm in chapter 2. Still kind of going through learning some of the mechanics and just kind of getting my bearings under me. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface in terms of, kind of what this game has to offer. But it's fun, man. I'm like I said, I'm genuinely surprised by this game. So first and foremost, the combat. I enjoy the combat. It's pretty basic, and I've only got like one ability right now, but it's satisfying. I've got to say. So you kind of fight these like ghost looking. I think they're visitors or something like that. I think is what they're called. And you're kind of just shooting them. I'm like throwing these like bullets out of my hand at them, and then once you kind of damage them enough, you can steal their core. And does this like crazy animation, and you kind of pull their cores and defeat them. And I don't know, there's something satisfying about it. Genuinely satisfying. It's great. I really enjoy that. And I gotta say, along with the combat is the animations are really awesome. And there's a lot of particle effects that go on with your magic abilities, and as you're hitting enemies, with your, for lack of a better term, bullets, your energy and all that stuff that's coming out of your hands and from your magic and stuff like that. There's just a lot going on, and I think it looks great. And you collect ammo that they look in the form of these particles. You defeat enemies, and you break down different objects and stuff like that. It looks great. I gotta say, I really like the animations and all that stuff. And there's definitely a ton of random things to collect, so it is indeed a collect-a-thon. One of the big ones is you collect these spirits, because everyone in Tokyo is gone, and that's kind of the premise of this game. And you're fighting these like supernatural beings and stuff like that. But there's spirits, people's spirits all around. And you kind of collect them, and then it's kind of weird. But then you deposit them into like this phone system. Like you go to a payphone and deposit them, and that's like how you save them. You get experience for it and stuff like that. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of cool at the same time, and I I like it. And it's also fun just kind of finding these random items, and you talk to yokai cats in the game, and just walking around downtown Tokyo is pretty dope. I gotta say, it's pretty cool. It also, I think that it runs well. I don't think I'm hitting full 60 FPS, even though I'm in performance mode on PS5, but it runs smooth enough. So, not too much to complain about there. And as I've mentioned before, and the devs have mentioned, it's not really a horror game. It's more of an action game. But there are some suspenseful moments. There's kind of this early section of the game where you're kind of going down these pretty narrow hallways in this apartment, and it kind of gets a little, creepy. Not like jump scare, but just kind of creepy vibes, atmosphere, all the like. So, I gotta say, overall, man, I want to actually, as soon as I'm done recording this podcast, if I have time, I want to go and continue playing it. It's great. I'm excited to continue my playthrough, and I'll probably have more to say on it next week. So with that, let's dive into a couple of those news stories that I mentioned at the top of the show. First is Bayonetta. So we finally got a release date for Bayonetta 3. Nintendo came out, dropped the news. It's coming out October 28th, 2022. And they dropped a 3.5-minute trailer sharing the news. And I got to say, I actually just watched it just before hopping on the podcast here. And the game looks great. It looks awesome. And if you've never played a Bayonetta game, try it. It's genuinely a lot of fun. The combat is fluid. It's fast. It's crazy. And it's just a joy to play, I think, from a gameplay perspective. Story-wise, I don't fully understand the story in the world that exists for Bayonetta, but it's cool enough. It's neat. And I think one of the things that makes the game fun is it's just like super out there, very, it's kind of got those like out there anime style tropes. And they definitely play the sexy lady up a little bit with the Bayonetta character and all that stuff. So they're awesome games, and Bayonetta 2 especially. And if you remember when that game came out on the Wii U as a Wii U exclusive, it was getting 10 out of 10 scores, Game of the Year recommendations when that came out. And I didn't play it when it came out on Wii U, but I played it later when it ported it to Switch, and it's genuinely an awesome game. I can see why it's got those scores and nominations. It's fantastic. So this new one looks awesome. I mean, it's got everything that you'd want in a Bayonetta game. I mean, it's got sexy ladies. It's got returning characters. It's got the fluid combat, monsters, great music. And it's even got some new abilities and new characters that they showed off in the trailer as well. So, hell yeah, dude. I'm super looking forward to this. I think it looks fan-freaking-tastic. Now, Nintendo also came out and said that there's a collector's edition it's the Trinity Masquerade Edition that comes with an art book, the game, and then 3 reversible cases, one for each game in the series, that combines to form some panoramic artwork, which is kind of cool. And a lot of people were like, well, wait a second, because Bayonetta 2, when that came over to the Switch, they offered a digital download for the first Bayonetta. And that game has never been available in physical form. But Nintendo dropped alongside this news that there will also be a physical edition of the first game to Switch coming later this year. So rejoice, physical game collectors. You can have all 3 physical games now on the Switch, which is pretty dope. Now, it's said that the Bayonetta 1 will be in limited quantities. So if you're interested, you might want to get on that once it goes up for pre-order. And it's going for the price of $29.99, which I think is absolutely appropriate. So this is exciting news. We finally have it. I did not think it would be coming this year, though they'd been talking about it coming this year. This game has been long in development. Definitely had some troubles. So hopefully it does well for Platinum Games, because I know they're kind of on the fence there. But I think it looks great, and I definitely can't wait to play it. The next news story I wanted to dive into is about Skate 4. If you guys remember that, EA came out, I want to say it was like last year during, the E3 time, and said, oh, Skate 4 is in development. And everyone's like, oh man, Skate 4, everyone has been asking for a Skate 3 sequel for so long. And we finally got confirmation of it. So the rub is, EA came out this week and stated that the new Skate game will be a live service game that is free to play. And it's actually just going to be called Skate. So it's not actually Skate 4. It's just kind of a reboot, if you will, in live service, free-to-play format. And it's kind of not too surprising that they're going this direction, but I think to some fans, definitely disappointing, especially those that enjoyed the single-player experience that the previous games had to offer. So I can kind of empathize with that. Now, the dev team also came out and stated that the plan is to have full cross-platform and cross-progression, which I think that's pretty awesome. That's one of the things that I don't really care per se about cross-platform in terms of being able to play with other people on other platforms. Because I don't, really seek out a lot of multiplayer-centric games. But cross-progression, I think, is pretty cool. For example, I played a brief stint on Warframe, and being able to kind of go from, like, let's say your console, let's say PS4, Xbox, over to Switch and kind of carry that progress that's pretty cool. And the time I've actually used it is with Destiny, when I was copying between the PlayStation and Xbox platforms. So I think cross progression is pretty freaking cool. And so it's nice to see that these features, and I know a lot of people love crossplay too, so nice to see that they're going to have these features. They also mentioned that there will be collabo zones, and that's what they call it, collab zones or whatever, which are areas where players will be able to collaboratively build and share with others in real time. And they talked about this is going to be an evolving sandbox where challenges, different lines are kind of always changing, and this is going to evolve over time. And again, not too surprising here. You're going to have your hub world. You're going to have lots of players kind of coming and going. But one thing that I think would be really cool, and I'm sure they'll have it in the game, it kind of sparked about being able to build things. Building your own skate park, I think would be really cool. And would totally fit into this, like, free-to-play, live service, build a community, because you could have all these people building all these different skate parks and having those accessible and playable. Like, let's say your friend builds a skate park and you can go join him in his skate park and go skate it. That sounds pretty dope. You know what I mean? Like, that sounds really, really awesome. And there's a lot you could do with, I'm pretty sure some of the later Tony Hawk games had to have had this, if I'm not mistaken. But I feel like there's a lot of things you could do with having some sort of player customization and letting people build parks. It's great. I think that would be so awesome. Now, some have had concerns about, pay to win, but The Verge reported that they stated that the monetization will only be about cosmetics. They said it'll be more about cosmetics. So again, not too surprising, if I'm being honest. And like I said, I think this could work as a free-to-play, in the free-to-play model. I think having a low barrier of entry, having it be cross-platform, cross-progression, I think that's certainly enticing for a lot of players. I would say put myself included in that. And I don't know if they've stated what platforms this game would be coming to, but I would love to see this on Switch. Albeit I understand that, the graphic sacrifice you'd be making and stuff like that. But the idea of having this like skateboard game that's, online live service, like on the go in a handheld form factor, I think is super appealing. So I think that'd be awesome and pretty dope. And there could be something here. Now, for myself, I played the first skate game, and back in like high school days, I was a huge skateboarder. Like, that was my life. And I've been to, when they did the Mountain Dew tour, I've been to that in Portland a couple times, and I've been to the Gravity Games one year when that was in Cleveland, Ohio. It's basically the X Games, very similar to the X Games. So I was very, very invested in extreme sports and skateboarding in particular. So this kind of stuff is near and dear to my heart. Played a lot of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and all that stuff. So I couldn't really get into the skate series too much. And that's kind of where when that game came out, if I remember, I was kind of drifting more towards, other style of games. Definitely into Call of Duty, but I think started getting like Fallout and those style of games. But I don't know. I think as much as I hate to see the constant shift towards live service, free to play, and then just games being monetized to the nth degree, the same way we see that in the mobile game space, I got to say, I think this game can work uh, in that style. Now, this game is likely years away, so we'll see how it does when it comes out. And I'm kind of curious to see, because I expect we won't see this game for another 2 years at least. So, because when they announced it, they had nothing. They had like concept art. Like this was in like pre-production. So it's kind of a joke at this point. But when it does come out, I think it'll be interesting to see what the free-to-play space looks like in console gaming, because it'll probably look drastically different than it does today. So they're going to be aiming for today, like what it looks like today, but that would be like some game coming out with a bunch of loot boxes today when that was super popular like 4 or 5 years ago. You know what I mean? Something like that. So we'll see when it comes out. So with that, let's dive into the main topic of this week's episode, which is the decline of GameStop. So I saw some news that GameStop was laying off some staff, actually, a decent chunk of staff, if I'm not mistaken. So gamesindustry.biz, which actually, I got to pause for a second. If you're super interested into like the financials or kind of the inner workings of the games industry, gamesindustry.biz is a fantastic website. They do some great reporting over there. So if you're ever curious, check that out. But gamesindustry.biz reports that GameStop has laid off their CFO, so Chief Financial Officer, as well as making cuts all across the company, laying off staff. And this follows another loss that they had, I think it was back in November, where their COO, Chief Operating Officer, left only after 7 months with the company, which is pretty crazy. Additionally, this is on top of news where apparently last month, GameStop reported its first quarter financial results showing upward sales, which is nice, but net losses of $158 million. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. So this is just, more recent news about GameStop, but they've been in the news for the last several years for a lot of similar and various reasons. Most of them not good. Let's be honest here. Maybe with the exception of the whole, you guys remember that whole stonks situation with the GameStop stock, and the Wall Street was basically, I think the rub is Wall Street was shorting them, and then basically the Reddit community and a bunch of people online bought a bunch of stocks and then somehow shifted that stock price to increase. Now, I don't pretend to fully understand the situation, but the stock prices rose, and it was artificially inflated by regular people like you and me on the internet. And I'm sure it made lots of people money, which, hey, great. Kudos to you people. And it is kind of a cool story and kick in the face, to the Wall Street types. So I'll put that in the positive case. That was an interesting fiasco. Now, in 2019, though, GamesIndustry.biz reported back in April of 2019 that they had posted a $673 million full year loss from that prior year. And that's pre-COVID, ladies and gentlemen, pre-COVID. That was also towards the tail end of the last generation of consoles. And I'm pretty sure, if I recall, they did see a nice boon in late 2020 due to the new consoles, and kind of been declining after that. But that's not good. Again, not good. And back in December of 2020, it was reported that GameStop closed 783 store locations in the last 2 years. That's a lot of stores. A lot of stores. Now, I don't know if any of you have had GameStops close around you. For me, from kind of the GameStops around my area, I think they're all there that I can remember. So I don't think I was personally affected by that. So with all that news and none of it really any good, I kind of wanted to pause for a moment and then speculate as to why GameStop is dying. And I use dying in a very loose term because even when I was, heavily doing YouTube in like 2013, 2014, we were kind of having a similar conversation, like, oh, GameStop's dying. GameStop's going to die. Died, that whole stuff. This has been talked about for years, and company's still here. So I use it with a grain of salt there. But some may seem it's obvious, as we start to dive into what I think are some of the reasons. But I think this is a good discussion point. And I think it's important because I think for a lot of gamers too, GameStop is a huge part of their lives in this industry. I mean, I think everyone at some point, if you're a video gamer, has been to GameStop. Maybe you bought something or walked in just to look. And, especially as a kid, like that store is crazy cool. There's so much in there. So I think this is iconic. I mean, if you love it or hate it, I think GameStop is an iconic part of the industry. So I wanted to touch on it. I think it's important. But before I share and kind of dive into some of the reasons I think GameStop is dying, I want to preface this. I got to preface this. I hate GameStop. I despise this store. I cannot. I do anything in my power to not go to GameStop. Now, have I shopped at GameStop? Yes. And I would say in the last 5 years, really the only reason I've gone to GameStop is because of Amiibo. They have exclusive Amiibo. For some reason, Nintendo loves to partner with GameStop for exclusive Amiibos. And if any of you are Amiibo collectors like myself, you know how annoying and frustrating that is. So I don't like GameStop. And a few of the reasons why I dislike them are in some of the reasons why I think they're failing. Again, I know it's anecdotal, but again, this is just my theory, backed up with a little bit of research here. So I do want to preface that. I am not a fan of this company whatsoever. So why? Why is GameStop dying? I think the first and biggest, most obvious answer is digital gaming and the rise of it. So Game Rant actually reported back in March of 2021 that in 2009, physical games accounted for 80% of the video game market, which is crazy. It's a lot. You fast forward that to 2018, and digital games now make up 83% of the market. Now, this isn't sales. This is strictly just kind of when games are put out, right? And that kind of makes sense if you look at the modern stores, console fronts, the storefronts on the consoles. Each week there's 50 games being released. It's just absolutely absurd, but there are so many games that are digital only. So that's a big part of it. The other thing, alongside digital gaming, is digital marketplaces are now way more prominent. So, like back in the day around, 2008, 2009 era, we had the Xbox Live Arcade, that marketplace. PlayStation had the storefront as well. And, there's a handful of indie titles in there. There's definitely lots of shovelware in there, but, not as big as they are today. But now these marketplaces are huge, in kind of copying that Steam model that they set in the PC space. These are huge. And the big three all have their own storefronts. In addition to those storefronts, there are also subscription services like Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, Nintendo Online. And with all these subscription services, gamers now have easy, cheap access to a huge library of games. Huge. And as I've mentioned multiple times before, games have never been more accessible or cheaper than they are today. That's a big factor, I think. So, for example, in February of 2022, Sony reported that digital game sales, accounted for 62% of their total sales. It's crazy. It's a lot. And I think that just continues to rise like every quarter for them, just that percentage. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, people are just buying their games from the digital storefront or accessing them from a subscription service rather than buying them from a store, namely GameStop. Now, as much as I love physical games, and I've talked about that, I like to, collect my physical games. There's something satisfying about it, in my opinion. There's no denying that we are moving away from that to a digital-only market like PC. That PC's been that way for decades. So there's just no denying that we're moving in that direction. Just kind of a slow burn in going there. And, a lot of ways I think it makes sense. It's much more cost effective for developers and publishers because now they don't have to worry about printing discs, shipping, distribution, all of that stuff that cuts into their profits on these games. And if you're a Nintendo Switch owner, you've heard of the Nintendo Switch tax because those cartridges are expensive to make, those game cartridges. So not having to do that and just being able to sell directly through your own storefront to consumers, you get 100% of the profit. It's a no-brainer. They want that. You know what I mean? That just absolutely makes sense. And so not only does this take away from sales of new games, but it also hits in their trade-in market and the used game market, which that side of their business is something that they rely super heavily on. So in that same Game Rant article that I referenced at the top of this segment, they stated that 46%, they make a 46% profit on each pre-owned game sold. That's huge. That's a big margin there, I would say. And in another article from gamesindustry.biz, an employee stated that many customers under the 18, and again, this is kind of anecdotal, but I think it kind of paints a picture. But he was stating that many customers under the age of 18 only come into the store to purchase V-Bucks for Fortnite. Granted that this was back in 2020, but still, I think it's indicative of the times. So with digital gaming being on the rise, marketplaces, subscription services, just the whole game landscape has changed. And quite honestly, I don't think GameStop has really kept up with that as well as they could have or should have, really. And so there's a lot of these factors that are just working against them. Now, another reason, and this is a little bit opinion-based on my end, but I do think it's a contributing factor. Their game quality is trash. And I mean that literally. When you buy a game from GameStop, it's trash. Because when you buy a new game from GameStop, unless it's like on the day of release or that first week, those games aren't new. You look on their shelves, it says new. It's got that full price sticker on it, but it's opened. It's not new anymore. It's an opened game. How you say that's new? The disc isn't even in there. You have opened that game, taken the disc out, and then stuck a sticker on it and put it on the shelf. That is not a new game. That is a used game. And you're charging full price for it. Nah. That shit pisses me off. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not new. And their used games have like 15 stupid stickers on them some of them are ripped off, and then it just, again, coming from someone that likes to keep nice, good care of my physical games, this is just unacceptable. And sometimes those used games don't even come with the original case, or it's just some like broken, janky ass case in there. No. That's just horrible quality. Horrible quality. Now, I know some people out there, maybe most people, don't care. They just, they want the disc, they want the game, whatever. And that's fine. That's fair. But the new game thing, you can't deny that. Those games are opened. That is not a new game. I will not accept it. No, sir. Outside of that, and that whole fiasco I was just ranting on about, their used games are only $5 less than new games. $5 less. Now, I know for some that savings is huge. And I'm not going to debate that saving $5 is saving $5. But in my opinion, it's not worth it. That extra $5 just isn't saving that $5 just isn't worth it. I mean, pay the extra $5, go somewhere else and pick up the game brand new in the wrapper, the shrink wrap. So you know it hasn't been tainted by some Cheeto fingered GameStop employee. Now, I get that that's a little cynical, but you get the point. Now, there's also even instances where the new copies of the game is actually less than the used version. That's how much the used games are and how overpriced they are. It's bonkers. Now, those are, I would say more likely rare scenarios, but still, dude, I'm telling you, their game quality is trash. Now, another component to this is the service. I think the customer service from GameStop. Now, not necessarily like when you call in, though I have had my own personal gripes with that. But I think in a lot of places, typically speaking, when you call into the call center, I mean, you're already kind of frustrated or pissed off as it is. And so wait times, all that stuff, it's a tough industry. So I'm talking about like in-person service. Like you go to the GameStop stores. Now, it's no secret that GameStop pushes for used games. I mean, we just talked about it's a 46% markup or something like that. It's a huge part of their business. So of course they're going to push used games. We all get that, and that's no secret. But in that earlier article that I mentioned from gamesindustry.biz regarding, and this is one regarding aggressive sales tactics. So they reported that there were some employees that anonymously, spoke to Polygon in an interview, and they mentioned a strict focus on sales targets and sheer desperation. And this is in the post-COVID era. And so, yes, they push sales, and to no surprise, right? That's the whole point. And if you've ever worked in retail, you understand it. You got to push the sales, right? But in my own personal experience, it's been hit and miss, but it's mostly when I've bought something, you get asked if I want to pre-order 50 upcoming new games, or pre-order, the 25,000 new Funkos that are coming out that may or may not be related to video games. It's like, dude, I get what you're trying to do. I get you got sales goals. I get it. But stop. It's just so annoying. Personally, I'm one of those people, like, I don't want to be sold anything. I don't want to be sold to. Now, I've done sales as a job, hated it, and it's just not in my personality. Some people have the gift of gab, the gift of the silver tongue, love talking to people, and it's right up their alley. For me, I'm the opposite of that. I don't, and I hated it. But like, I get it. I don't want to be sold to, though. Just let me come in, let me buy my game or my amiibo that is exclusive to your damn store, and let me walk out. I don't need to pre-order and put down $5 for 1,500 games that aren't even going to come out. Like imagine pre-ordering Halo Infinite when it was released or first announced. You waited 5, 6 years for that game? Like, again, I'm exaggerating slightly. But here's no exaggeration. Imagine pre-ordering Kingdom Hearts 3 or Final Fantasy VII Remake. Or, hell, right now you can pre-order Metroid Prime 4. That game has been announced 3-4 years ago, and we're still sitting. We haven't even seen a lick of gameplay from that game. It's in development hell, but I digress. My point is, they're pushy on sales and stupid shit too, and they push the used games. Now, I have one personal experience about the used game thing where I was looking for this game because it was during the holidays. It wasn't on Black Friday, but it was around those times of deals. And the first Dragon Quest Warriors game, I think those, God, what are they called? Hold on. Okay, Dragon Quest Heroes. Sorry, that just totally escaped me. But I was looking for the first Dragon Quest Heroes game because it was on sale for like $9 or something. And I was like, it kind of looks cool for $9. And GameStop was the only one that had it at that price because believe me, I looked elsewhere. I was like, okay, I'll go in and pick it up. So it said on their site that they had a new version of the game for $9 online in stock in the store. So when I showed up, the guy said they didn't have it and offered me a used copy. And that didn't sit well with me, but I made sure that it was okay. If I'm going to get this used copy, I want to make sure it's got a good case, it's in good condition, et cetera, et cetera. And luckily for me, it was, so I ended up getting it and walked away. But still, this is typical, and I'm sure there are tons of you out there that have similar stories to where you're looking for a game, or you bought a used game, it was poor quality, or you were in there buying something and get pushed 15,000 other products. And on the flip side, to their credit, I know there are some GameStop employees out there that are good people and that are genuine gamers and, have good conversations. Like a friend of the show, my buddy Rob, who I've mentioned on here before, he loves GameStop. And in one of our local stores around here, he has like a good relationship with one or two of the employees. Like they know him, they know kind of what he's looking for. And, that level of service is good when you get those, the personnel that actually care about their customers. But what I don't like and what I've seen consistently is constantly trying to be able to upsold stuff. And it just doesn't sit well with me. Now, another factor here that I think is contributing to their decline is their competition in the retail space. So in the box, the box stores with the likes of, Best Buy, Target, Walmart, Amazon, etc. And we talked about the rise of digital, but competition in this space is heavy as well compared to GameStop. And the biggest example I can think of is shipping when it comes to shipping. So obviously Amazon has kind of set the standard for shipping, free 2-day shipping, especially, if you're a Prime member, you get that and all that stuff. And in some cases next day. And other retailers with the likes of like Best Buy has kind of matched this level of service. However, GameStop, up until I would say in the last year, failed to do this. And they weren't offering this. So again, I've mentioned Amiibos. There are some Amiibos that have been exclusive to GameStop. And when I've had to buy those Amiibos, I have to pay shipping for each and every one. So I could buy, $50. If I'm buying 3 Amiibos, $50 worth of something, and I still have to pay shipping for each individual item. That is ridiculous. In this day and age, that is ridiculous and unacceptable, in my opinion. I could not stand it. I think it's archaic. And I get it costs the company money and all that. I understand that stuff. But when your competition isn't doing that, you need to find a way to match that level if you want people to come and do business with you. It doesn't just frustrates the shit out of me. And it doesn't make sense. Like, I just don't understand. Now, I will say, again, they've come around to it. And again, GameStop had an exclusive with the Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak Collector's Edition, which came with the Amiibo, the only place where you can get the Amiibo. So I ended up getting that, and luckily that came with free shipping. So, okay, I'll let it go now. But still, I don't think they've kept up to their competition in the retail space. They've been far behind on that from, as we mentioned, service, but also in terms of some of the features that they offer their customers, like shipping. And for me, like, it makes me not want to do business. When I can go elsewhere and get a better deal, I will. And the only reason in the instances where I've had to shop at GameStop, I haven't, is because of those exclusive Amiibos, because I cannot find it anywhere else. Otherwise, I would. And again, that's how they're drawing you in. They're trying to get those exclusive deals. But when you have no competition because it's exclusive, you're not going to change. So competition in the marketplace is good. And in the case of shipping, outside of my own personal experiences, they finally come around to it. And the last thing, and I think this is an obvious, I think, contributing factor, but it's worth mentioning, is the pandemic. And the pandemic has hurt everyone, especially during the summer of 2020 when everything was shut down. GameStop had to shut down their stores for a limited time. And I think kind of in the, late summer-ish, after things started, settling down in terms of COVID and the pandemic and the restrictions and all that stuff. And probably because I said COVID, now we're going to have a restriction on my podcast. Oh, the old COVID warning. But anyways, they started doing like curbside pickup and stuff like that. So, but still, there's no denying that shutting down businesses have hurt them. There's a lot of small mom and pop shops that, because they had to be shut down because the government stepped in and said, you cannot do business now, just died. And this, even for a big corporation like GameStop, it's hurt them. I saw a report from Game Rant that this brought a drop, during the pandemic, a drop of in-store sales of around 17%. I mean, that's nothing to joke about. That's a big chunk of change, especially when you're reporting year over year, quarter over quarter losses for GameStop. That's not good. That's not a good position. And, they've shifted to, obviously everyone does e-commerce, online sales and stuff like that. But there's still, I think there's something to be said to still go into a store to be able to kind of look at products, see products and stuff like that, and then buy them. Yeah, it's a little old school, but I think there's still lots of people that enjoy doing that, especially if you can get a good deal, So I certainly think you have to call out the pandemic when you talk about its effect on businesses, and GameStop is no exception to that. So, I mean, with that, and I'm sure there are other reasons out there or contributing factors that are, contributing to this decline in GameStop. I'd love to hear from you. So if you have any ideas or theories or feedback on mine, leave me a comment. Hit me up on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast and let me know, because I think this is pretty big in the gaming space. So the question is, how long does GameStop last? And as I mentioned before, we've been talking about the decline of GameStop. I say we, but we as gamers, that's kind of been a topic of discussion for years, a decade at least. So how long? How long does it last? And for me, like they'll stick around for at least a few more years, at least. I don't, I think they'll ride that ship till it dies. And, I think the big thing is when the subscription services are catching on. So that's going to be a big benefit. I think when you get a console, a shift in the console space where there's no disc, I think that's when you start to see these retail stores be like, oh shit, we're losing our partners. And when you see like the likes of Microsoft and Sony and Microsoft has kind of already done this because they don't really care about game sales. And we've talked about that before. But I think when you get these companies like a Nintendo or PlayStation and they're like, we're going digital. When that move happens from the big three, I think that's when you're going to see the death of a lot of these stores, GameStop included. So now, to GameStop's credit, they have tried to change their business model, change some of their tactics. I mentioned the focus on e-commerce, their website. They've also changed their, and if you've been to GameStop or been to their website, that's a huge focus on figures, collectibles, merchandise around video games and nerd culture and stuff like that, and even other tech outside of games. I've seen monitors on sale from there. I've seen tablets, other electronic devices on sale, and they'll buy them at GameStop. So in order to accommodate and make up for their lack of video game sales. So I'll give them credit to that space, though. I don't see how the ship turns around if you don't fix some of those problems that I mentioned above that I think are contributing factors to the decline. So while I hate to see employees lose their jobs, that I don't wish that upon anybody. Like, honestly, that is horrible. And anytime you see, staff being laid off at a company or a developer or, anywhere really, it's, my heart goes out to that, because that is a tough position to be in, especially in this current economy and with the inflation and all that stuff. Like, I'm truly sympathetic to that. And I don't want to see that. But I can't stand GameStop. I really can't. And I would love to see them turn around and be on par with the likes of like if I had to choose a big box retail store, I would choose Best Buy. Absolutely. So I would, and you know what? If they never get another exclusive amiibo, I will be happy because I won't have to go there. So that'll do it. That's my rant about GameStop. And that's, honestly some contributing factors to why I think GameStop is declining. But of course, I want to hear from you. So let me know what you think about that down in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter at Gamesite Podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed this topic and some rants about GameStop. Because like I said, I think we've all been there, and it's a big part of the industry. And it'll be a different world when GameStop finally decides to throw in the towel. So hope you all do well. Stay safe out there. I appreciate your love, kindness, and support of the show. And until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.